Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TraderMerlin Show. It is your Thursday edition. Recording day for me in the studio. Ready to do a lot of recording. Anyway, hope you had a great session. My lights look really bright today, so I don't know if the visual is going to be any different than it normally is, but I hope it was a great trading session for you. I actually, we talked about that shooting star on the S&P and the NASDAQ yesterday. Traded it today, so I got a position open. I'll tell you about that. Open up on the triple Qs. I wasn't with the S&P, but I think that the tech is going to have a little bit of a difficulty next week with all those major earnings announcements. That said, let's focus on a different topic. Airlines. Today was a great day for earnings for airline companies, and it's kind of funny. Back in, I think it was early November of last year, I was writing an article for Bar Chart and had it all mapped out. I was like, all right, I had two choices. I was going to do an airline article, and I think the other article I was going to do, I can't remember, but I ended up choosing the other article instead. And kind of bummed out because the airline play is one that I did not buy airlines, and I was telling myself I should buy some airlines, and things looked really, really good. So let me just bring up a chart of American Airlines, for example, going back in November of last year, and you can see kind of why I was thinking that. If you look at how beaten up airline stocks were, this is American Airlines, for example, and you have going from July of 2023, it was over $19, fell all the way down to $11. Now, of course, as a percentage change, this is huge, and it felt to me, at least in some of the travels I've done recently, that airlines are packed. The profits there should have been pretty good. Airlines are packed, and then if you couple that with the fall in price of energy from July through November, it told me that the profits were probably going to start to get a little bit better for these airline stocks. So here is the chart of American Airlines from July. Let's just go look at what so this is where I was looking at, this fall from September. So as we had this really sharp slide in November, I was thinking airlines are going to start to show some good numbers here. And lo and behold, they did start to pick up. They did start to turn around. And now, John said he's watching from inside an Alaska jet right now. All right, well, he's got insider information there on that Alaska Airlines. Safe travels, my friend. Hope you have a good trip wherever you are headed. But let's go look at some of the numbers here. So I normally was going to do these release these one by one, but here is just the gist of it. So I'll start with United, which is in the middle there. Now, United reported earlier this week. I think that was Tuesday they reported. They were expecting $1.61, came out at $2 per share. Now, United has a very similar picture to what we were looking at here. And there is your chart of United Airlines as we speak. So it had that big surge from late October, rallying up, let's see, a good 32% in just 50 trading sessions. So all in all, very good, although it feels like it's struggling a little bit right now, even though it's had this great rally for the past week. And of course, on their earnings surge 5% today. So all in all, United looking okay, but those numbers are what's really cause for rejoicing here, because those are huge numbers, big beats on their previous number expectations. I mean, when you beat something by 39 cents, that's a pretty significant beat, but it gets even better for some of the ones that reported today. So, yeah, John, make sure those doors stay closed today, all right, bud? So look at the top one there. So United reported earlier this week, and it didn't really respond that great. Yes, it's been moving up, but didn't have the big surge. It seems like today it joined with American, Southwest, and Alaska, who all reported earnings today. Now look at that top one. American was expecting to make 6 cents per share, just barely making a profit, and all of a sudden, 29 cents per share. I can tell you that the executives are loving this because they're getting some big bonuses on this one, and their share price surged accordingly. Let's go look at American Airlines here real quick just to see what AAL did. Today alone, you had a 10.27%, and I like the picture. You guys know what I like to look for on price charts. So technically, you have this breakout above these highs, which is right around $14.70. So at this point, your thought about downtrend or sideways trend is over. It's uptrend and looking like higher highs, higher lows. Now, don't be the one to chase it. Don't ever sit in row 26. Now I need to know. John, you gave me some trivia. I will do on my Tuesday night. My question will be, which row of an airplane should you never sit on? I'm going to say 26 is the answer, but I need to have justification for it. Love to know the answer why you never sit in row 26. Anyway, this looks great for American Airlines. Obviously, that huge surprise, I think, largely due to the price of oil. Now, keep in mind, here's what's been going on with oil. right? We've seen for the past couple months, oil has been surging. Remember, these earnings are lagging. So as this ticks up, you may see this expectations versus actual number drop, change significantly, right? I'm not saying that this is going to be a strong uptrend for American Airlines going forward. Right now, it looks like it is. However, if energy prices surge, that being a major cost of doing business for these airlines, that could be a driver to the downside here for American going forward. But just keep an eye on that. Right now, I like the share price. So that was number one. That was American. Southwest, a little bit of love, spreading some love to the shareholders today. Well, at least on the earnings front. Now, I did not listen to any of these press conferences afterwards. I just looked at the actual numbers. Southwest was expecting 11 cents, came out at 37. Hallelujah. I mean, that's a huge beat on earnings. You've tripled your earnings expectation. Love it. What happened to love? Well, not so lovely. So Southwest gapped up huge. And actually a very similar chart to what we saw with American there. Jumped up big time and then sold off all day long. This is a pretty significant move to the south side. At one point today, based off of yesterday's close, Southwest was up 5.43%, ultimately hitting an intraday low of down 3.73, closing down 2.31%. So while the news is good for most airlines because of oil and energy costs, Southwest did not. And I'm not sure why that is. Now, years ago, there was a lot of talk about how Southwest was hedging their fuel prices with options, or with futures contracts, and that's one of the reasons that during that window of time, this is many years ago, Southwest continued to perform well while other airlines tanked. The reason was Southwest had used futures markets to lock in the price of their jet fuel, whereas the other airlines were kind of buying it at what the market rate was, and they were paying a much higher rate. Therefore, the profit margins for Southwest were much greater at the time. Now, I would assume that activity is probably pretty standard throughout the airline industry, and maybe Southwest locked in on their fuel prices using futures at a much higher price, and that may be hurting those profits. I don't know where it comes from, why it's like that, but I thought that was kind of interesting to see, a huge beat on Southwest earnings and on American, yet American surged and Southwest didn't. So I'd like to dig deeper into, John says we hedge about half our fuel. So with that said, let's go look at our third contestant today, which is Alaska Airlines. Now, Alaska did not have as significant of a beat. They were expecting 18 cents per share, came out at 30 cents per share. That said, that's a hell of a beat. I mean, if you're going to almost double your earnings expectations, that is hats off to you. It makes me a little bit curious, when you look at somebody that beats earnings by that much, typically what you get are all the Wall Street, hedge funds, mutual funds, everybody's investing in these companies has a pretty good understanding of the financials. They know the numbers. They've got accounting teams running everything, and they should be pretty ballpark with their earnings. When you get a 200 or 300% miss on earnings, it makes me question, is there really transparency there? Was there a big mistake by the analysts or whatever? Anyway, Alaska, blowout on earnings. They were 18 cents expectations, came out at 30. Congratulations to Alaska. Let's go look at ALK. So Alaska's chart of those three looks the weakest, right? They all suffered that huge decline from July through November of last year. All of them bounced up, but Alaska really kind of has been struggling to get back on its feet here. So of those three I just mentioned, American, Southwest, and Alaska, no offense to the flight staff or anybody affiliated with those, but just from a technical perspective, it doesn't seem to be getting back on track as much. So out of those three that I just mentioned, Alaska, which is AOK, this one, you've got AAL, which is American Airlines, which looks like that, and then you have LUV, Southwest. I'm a fan of Southwest Airlines. However, out of those three, my number one pick for today, if you're going to look to buy an airline, would be look at American Airlines. And now, I wait for a pullback here. Granted, it's been looking great. Don't chase it. Wait for a pullback here. There's a ton of enthusiasm and optimism based off the earnings numbers that came out today. But all in all, I think it looks great for airlines. Now, that said, I've got two more. We've got one, which I think has got a horrible ticker symbol, HA. Ha! No, not a good name there at all. So you have the name, the potential buyout here with Hawaiian, or the buyout with Hawaiian. That's caused prices just to stick locked in at that right around that $14 price. We're at $14.69 right now. So that's kind of an outlier technically, even though the chart looks much worse. Right, that sell-off, which we saw for most markets start in June of last year, it's been going on since June of 2021 for Hawaiian Airlines. So really the worst, ugliest one of them. They're probably buying off the assets is why you saw them sell. So they report on the 30th, which is next week. And then you have local favorite JBLU, JetBlue, whose chart also looks pretty ugly here. This is, we've got one of our friends, Michael, who's a regular on this show. He always likes to bring up penny stocks or stocks that have a chart that looks like this. And if you ask me what to do with a company that looks like this, you either stay short or you just stay away from it because it looks like it's going to be going to zero. Now, we know with airlines, they're not going to go to zero. They will most likely sell their assets or be acquired by somebody at less than book value. So all in all, JetBlue, they were great for a while. I love traveling with JetBlue, but then this chart doesn't look that great. This is not a good looking chart. However, given the news we saw right here with American, Southwest, Alaska, and United all not only beating earnings, but blowing out earnings, it kind of leads me to believe that Hawaiian and also JetBlue are most likely going to see a beat on earnings. Now, look at their numbers. The first four I mentioned, which was American, Southwest, Alaska, and United, all had positive expectations. If you look at JetBlue and Hawaiian Air, all negative expectations, right? Yeah, it's your flight was canceled. Oh, well, speaking of canceled airlines, we can bring up Spirit here, which is, of course, my least favorite of them. Still not getting back on its feet, just still floundering down here. Again, this is one of those ones that if they don't get their act together, they will most likely file for a restructuring bankruptcy and maybe sell off their assets, which could benefit any one of these 5-6 airlines I have on the page here. Buy those assets on the cheap. Anyway, that is my quick run through of the airlines today. That was really the fun market. And what was really funny was I asked airlines or AI to draw me airplanes, and some of these airplanes are great. The wings are different. They're some of them had like 8 wings going on, and I was like, I want to fly that plane. Tom says 35 years ago, a round trip SoCal to Detroit was $300, and SoCal apartment rent was $300. I still find $300 airfares, but rent is over $2,000. Oh, I agree they should raise their prices, but then again, I don't want them to because that'll require me to or make me want to travel less. It's the cost of fuel. Been doing a ton of deadheading since the door plunged. Yeah, I'm sure that's a weird one. Blue Sky? Let's go. Oh, got it. Blue Sky from... You got me, Margaret. Or no, it's Blue Star, right? Blue Star was the one from Wall Street. All right, let me go into our overall markets, and then I'll go to whatever Q&A you guys have. The 10-year today sold off just a little bit. But actually, before I dive into that, let's go to something else. And unfortunately, I did not send myself this graphic. Dab nabbit. A lot of times I will send myself pictures to present to you guys. Let me see if I don't think I copied and pasted that one. Bummer. Yahoo had a great chart today, and I was really looking forward to sharing that one with you, which talked about GDP. Let me see if I can find it for you real quick. The GDP numbers, of course, came out today. That was the big one that I was interested in, and they came out better than expectations, which good to hear from an economy perspective. I was kind of hoping it would miss. That would have helped me with my short potential trade here. Let me see. Yeah, it's not on this one. Anyway, let's go to Forex Factory, and I'll show you that one right now. So here is today's numbers. That's Thursday. We'll look at that advanced GDP number. This is an annualized rate. So with the number that came out, the previous month or previous quarter was at 4.9% growth, which great numbers. The expectations were that annualized we were going to come out at 2% inflation. GDP. The good news for everybody is the expectations or the actual numbers came out and they weren't at 2%. They were at 3.3%. So while we have declined from the previous reading, it still is a pretty nice size number there. And you look here historically, I've got this going all the way back to 2000. And you'll notice I'm going to put my horizontal line right here, and that looks to be about where the most points of contacts are, which is right around 2.5, which means that historically, going back the last 22, 23 years, we are slightly above the average historically. So this is really good for anybody who's bullish on the economy, for anybody who feels like we're going to have a soft landing, and for anybody who feels that the Fed is going to start to lower interest rates here sooner rather than later. The GDP number, obviously a big factor there. So let me, on that note, show you what the current FOMC Fed Funds Futures looks like and see where we stand there. Have we seen a shift? Now, it may not have incorporated in today's data. Let me just real quickly see here. This was adjusted as of, so it's not including today's markets. This includes up to 2 o'clock this morning Pacific time, so it doesn't include the current one. So, as you guys may know, we have a rate announcement happening on the 31st. Next Wednesday will be an announcement, and right now expectations are 97% we are going to stay the same. But when do we start to see this balance shift? Well, it looks like the March 20th meeting is where most people are expecting a 25 basis point cut in our rates. So that to me was a little bit sooner than I would have anticipated. I think we should wait a little bit longer, but I don't make the rules. I just trade them. So you notice that the 48.7%, that's the bet right now that we are going to keep right where we're at and hold rates at 5.25 to 5.50. There is a 50% chance that we drop 25 basis points and a 1.3% chance we drop 50 basis points. Now, you notice here at the bottom, we have seen an increase in, at least in the last day, we're going to see an increase in the probability of rates being cut to 25 basis points. However, a month ago, there was a 75% chance. So we're seeing it, the odds are actually declining over what we saw about a month ago. Now, when it starts to get a little bit later into the year, towards December of next year, remember they talked about doing, the Fed talked about doing, what did they say, get to 4.6. 4.6 would be three rate cuts. And right now the market is still pricing in a 38% chance that we're going to see 6 rate cuts next year. So I still think the market's a little bit ahead of itself, but that GDP number sure helped out things today with that data. Now, other data that came out today, other than the GDP, we had durable goods orders. I thought this one was really bad, yet it got overshadowed by GDP. Durable goods orders are orders for things that last 3 years. Microwaves, TVs, stereos, refrigerators, dishwashers. Notice we were at 5.5% growth month over month. Expectations were going to drop to 1.2. 0. To me, that's an odd one. That's a pretty big miss there to go to 0. Now, granted, I mentioned this on yesterday's show. You see these big moves down, big moves up, big moves down. Well, this seems to be following the pattern, and maybe there's some seasonality to it that I'm not aware of. Every other month, it seems like there's a huge surge in durable goods orders, but right now we are back to 0 on durable goods. We'll see what happens next month's reading, if that drops even lower. Let's see. Liz says, can you explain how, if advanced GDP, QRQ beat expectations by quite a lot, yet the advanced GDP index missed expectation by quite a bit? Yeah, that's a weird one. So if you look here, this is the advanced GDP price index, so it's a different measure, right? So this one beat, but this is the prices of the components, I believe, that make up GDP. I mean, you could actually read it in here. It's the broadest measure of inflation encompassing So the price index is your inflationary reading of that, excuse me. So let's go back to ADG price index. GDP is just the goods and services. This is the inflation of it. So seeing this drop means that inflation is dropping as well. Right? So that's what that represents. And I think that answered your question there. If advanced GDP Q4 beat expectation by quite a lot, yet the advanced GDP index, that's the price index, which is inflationary measure. Second part of this, unemployment claims was up a little bit, but that's no big deal. I mentioned the durable goods orders, which is pretty important. That was your major pieces for today, other than the euro reporting that they were going to keep rates right where they're at. And for those of you that are trading that European Union currency, here is the EUR-USD. I'll show you this in a 5-minute just so you can see the impact that this type of stuff has. And there's your announcement right there. Actually, should be before the market's open. Let me see real quick. Yeah, 5:15. So that's right as that announcement came out. You saw that pretty sharp sell-off here in the euro against the US dollar. What will happen if the Fed does not lower at the next meeting? Which right now that's the expectation, right? If we look at the next meeting, which is January 31st, right here, the expectation is they're not. What happened if they don't lower at this meeting? Markets will just truck along and feel like things are okay. Now, if you were asking about the next meeting, which is that March 20th meeting, if they don't lower at the March 20th, which right now the expectation is that they're going to lower, actually it just changed, this must have just updated, the market could react in a myriad of different ways. Initially, you would think that if the Fed is expected to cut and they don't cut, that tells you the Fed is still feeling the impacts of inflation on the economy, and and maybe unemployment's rising. What are the two factors that they're looking at that maybe they're not as optimistic as the rest of the market is? And that might foreshadow a sell-off in the markets, at least in my opinion. So if the markets are expecting there to be a rate cut and we don't get one from the Fed, I would expect the markets to sell off. That would be my first take at it at face value, just of are they cutting rates or not. All right. Let's see, what else we got to get into? So I wanted to talk about the economic data. We talked about GDP. We talked about the airlines. Let's go ahead real quick and look at our top 8 markets here. I mentioned just a minute ago that 10-year bond sold off a little bit today. Didn't have as much of an impact on those markets, but I still like the way that this chart is drawn here. I got 3 points of contact, and I also have the supply zone that 10-year is moving towards. So right around 4.25 to me will be that next potential stopping point for the 10-year, which was down just a little bit today. All right, so I am short the NASDAQ right now, and it's not looking good so far. I'll explain why I shorted the NASDAQ, and you guys can yell at me if you want. It's fine. It's my money. I can do with it what I want. NASDAQ, as of right now, down 0.08. Oh, sorry, up 0.08, excuse me. It was down a little bit more than that today. Actually, it was negative at one point during today's trading session, and then rallied it back up near the end, and we were only up 0.08% on the NASDAQ 100. All in all, still looking very strong. I could make the argument that it feels like it's weakening. Of course, I'm biased at this point because I am officially short on the NASDAQ 100. But if you look at the chart, we did not make a higher high today. We did make a lower low, but we did not make a higher high on that NASDAQ. And here's the triple Q so you can see a better picture of it, right? I'll zoom in here. We did not make a higher high, which tells you that people aren't willing to buy as much as they did yesterday. And then today we made a new low. So the good news for anybody bullish is we made a new low, but it rallied back up and closed a little bit higher, showing a gain. But the fact we didn't make a higher high, that's a good sign for anybody who's bearish. We'll see my stop's going to be up above yesterday's high. So we'll just see how hopefully Friday gives me a nice little sell-off, and I can have a celebratory whiskey for you guys on our Friday show. And by the way, I feel really guilty and bad about this. I received a lovely package from one of you that was sent to the office that had a fantastic bottle of Canadian whiskey and also another rye whiskey, which I polished off during the San Francisco 49ers game over the weekend. And I had the card. It's going to give a nice shot out, and then the box got thrown away with the card in it, and I can't remember the name of the person. So message me, let me know. I really appreciate it. It was a great gift. I'll even have some on the show tomorrow, but I feel so bad because I'd love to give props and give an appropriate thank you for people who take the time to send me a nice bottle of whiskey. Come on, that's the least I can do for you guys. But I lost the card. I can't believe it. It's funny because I threw it away and then it was garbage day the next day, and I was like, oh, it's in the box. And I ran out there, and the garbage truck was just leaving. So anyway, thank you again for the gift. I should give you props, but I can't remember who sent it. Oh, man, getting old sucks. All right, let me continue on this list. So there's the triple Qs. I will go all the way back up here and go to the gold chart. So gold, nothing to speak of here, right? It just kind of sideways, slightly up on the day, no big deal. Silver was a bit better. I enjoyed the little move up in silver today. We had 1.1% gain. It doesn't look like it had a gain today because this is a big red candle, but it actually gapped up and pretty much stayed right there. So all in all, I'm happy with that. 20.94. I have not sold calls against my position yet. I've actually been of the opinion that silver is going to have a rally here, so I didn't want to sell calls quite yet. I'd like to sell it when it gets a little bit higher and collect some premium. I think if it gets above 21 tomorrow, I'll probably try to sell those 22.50s and see what kind of premium I can get for that. But I'm bullish on silver for the intermediate term, even though this chart looks bearish. I'm bullish on silver. All right, number 5 on our list here is the S&P 500, which had a similar picture with that shooting star yesterday. This is the ES futures. It did not make a new low on the S&P today, and don't worry, I'll show you on the triple Qs my exact one, and we'd have sent the. You can always send whiskey, Gary. You can always send whiskey. So here's SPY, which picture doesn't even look anywhere close to that, right? Anywhere close to what the S&P chart looks like. I like the S&P chart, the ES chart better. But I still am in the camp of this shooting star remains. And unless we break the high of the S&P in this, let's say it starts to pull back, then this line right here at 48.89 is still a valid play to go short. And I may short some SPY if we get below that level tomorrow or at some point in the next couple of days. But S&P was up 0.52% to 49.23. Dollar index showing a little bit of strength as well, even though it's really been sideways for about the past 2 weeks. 103.48 is where the Dixie is at as we speak, only a quarter of a point percentage gain. All right, now podium time. Bronze medal, Russell 2000. Technically, who cares? It really doesn't look like much. It's just consolidating, so just traversing sideways, no big deal. Bitcoin, though, slightly up. I'm not having any joy with this one. I actually was feeling bearish because of yesterday's candle. It didn't make me feel very good. But today, Bitcoin jumped up a little bit, 0.82% gain for Bitcoin. But technically, there's nothing here to write home about. Yes, we broke yesterday's high, but we didn't close above it. And then finally, crude oil. We've been talking about this one. Talking about how my optimism will become much greater once we start to break through that 76.18 mark and get a close above it. And lo and behold, look what happened. We broke above 76.18 and screamed higher. We finished the day at 77.36, a 3% gain for crude oil. Now, I know some people will be looking over here at these highs from November. You have multiple points where it just kind of traversed back and forth and establish some highs. But I'm really targeting this $80.82 mark. 80.82 is the origin of this big drop that happened on Tuesday, November 7th. And for me, that becomes my next logical target there. Let's see. What do we got? Tom says, sending booster Merlin is contributing to the delinquency of a niner. That's good. Clever one. It's funny because I think everybody has this assumption that I'm just like an alcoholic, that I drink all the time. I really will just have a glass on the show. I had a football get together at my place over the weekend. So, granted, we had a couple glasses of whiskey then, but really not that, not a huge one. Do you think by FTX selling Bitcoin causing Bitcoin to go down? Absolutely, Chio. FTX, I believe, sold over $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. So anytime you have a market that is as sensitive as Bitcoin's market is, and someone sells $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, it's going to have a profound effect. The good news, at least in my opinion, is FTX sold $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, and there's your impact there. Now, who knows exactly the sell dates? But apparently they're out of $1 billion worth, and you only dropped it this much. Fine. Now what's great is we've now put that back into circulation. That Bitcoin's in circulation, and now that can be part of the overall circulating supply. Great. Most likely that's going to be distributed amongst more people rather than just one institution, which of course adds stability to price. When you have more people holding something, the price will become more stable. If you have one person holding it, price can become very volatile by their actions. So yes, I like FTX selling their Bitcoin. It did cause it to go down significantly. However, now we can remove that variable. Let me explain that again. So let's say I have 10 people. If one person owns, let's say, 50% of the shares in circulation. One person owns 50%. That one person can have a profound impact on what happens to price. All they have to do is sell their shares at once, or coins or tokens, and that market's going to crater. Now, let's say I take that same value. They got 50% of the supply, and that was, 1 million tokens. Now I switch that amongst 10 different people. What happens is if it's evenly distributed amongst those 10 people and one person decides to sell all their crypto or asset or stock or shares, whatever, right now, it won't have as much of an impact. It will be muted because they don't have a bulk of the coins or tokens in circulation. So by distributing Bitcoin to more hands, having more holders of Bitcoin, it'll start to add stability to price, particularly if you get people like myself or Big Eb in here who we're hodlers, right? We are going to hold Bitcoin regardless of what happens to price. I'm going to keep on holding Bitcoin. And to me, that ultimately will drive prices higher and higher and higher. So there you go. Good question. Which ETF and miners to buy for silver? That's a good one. Good question. I should have John O'Donnell on this one for that one, Michael. There's a silver mining. Franco-Nevada would be the main one that I would look to. Of course, you look at the price chart here for FNV. It doesn't look good. Franco-Nevada does not look like it's really done anything, although I do like the fact that it's no longer selling off aggressively. It's consolidating. So if you are looking at Franco-Nevada as a silver play, they do other things as well, but they're a silver royalty firm. If I'm looking at buying it, I certainly would have my stop loss down below these lows from December of last year, just in case I'm wrong and things could keep on drifting. So as far as an ETF for silver, well, that's easy for me. I mean, I'm just going SLV, which, is futures driven, but It's fine. I'll take it. This is the one I'm typically trading is SLV. Maybe Michael Saylor bought it up. Yeah, boy, MicroStrategy. Jeez. You know, it's funny. There's a lot of talk about MicroStrategy potentially bringing the first trillionaire to market. And if Bitcoin does what I think it's going to do, then Michael Saylor may actually become that first trillionaire on the planet because of how much Bitcoin. Now, granted, it's not him, it's his company. So that's a little bit confusing here, but he's got so much of it. And, you know, with that fall in Bitcoin's price, I think it created a buying opportunity here for anybody who wants to jump into MicroStrategy. Is that also what happened when Mt. Gox sold its Bitcoin? So Mt. Gox is supposed to distribute a bunch of it, but yes, when these firms are forced to liquidate and pay off their holders, that's the impact. When you have big selling pressure come to the marketplace, yep. You know, I've made this point many times in my Bitcoin presentations that you have very few people that actually own Bitcoin right now. Very few, like, real holders. If you look at the US dollar, you have billions of holders around the world, right? We've got almost 8 billion people population. You know, I would say over half have some exposure to US dollars. It's in their local markets, whether they're in the US or living internationally, you have some exposure to US dollars. It's kind of everywhere. It's diluted amongst the world. Bitcoin's not. If we get to the point that, let's say, heck, even if we get to 100 million people are using Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin will become much more stable because of just the sheer amount of people using it, and therefore the quantities of Bitcoin in one individual person's pocket will be much smaller. You know, for example, I told you before, my goal is to get to 10 Bitcoin. That may not seem like a lot to most people, but if you go down the road a decade, right? Let's just look at this. I'll bring up some math here just to show you some numbers. And this is going to be debatable. I know some of you guys are going to debate me on this one, which is totally fine. I love a good friendly debate. Let's assume that all of the Bitcoin available in the world are out there. It's 21 million. And let's say we got 8 billion people. Let me rephrase. We got 21 million Bitcoin. Right? There's 21 million. If I divide that by 8 billion, that means that there is at maximum 0.002 Bitcoins per person. 0.002. So if I had 10 of those, I'm putting myself in the 1% of the 1% crowd. I think if you actually held a single full Bitcoin, if you're a full coiner, and we get some adoption, I'm obviously making an extreme example here. There's no way that 8 billion people are going to be using Bitcoin. It was just a math formula. But what if we got to 100 million, right? If you got to 100 million people using Bitcoin, that means that there would be half a Bitcoin per person, less than half a Bitcoin, like 0.45 Bitcoin per person. And if I had 10 of them, I'm way ahead of that curve. Where can I check if BlackRock bought the Bitcoin that FTX sold? Good question, Chio. You can go to different blockchain explorers to see all those transactions. I haven't followed that at all. FTX may have just made a public disclosure that they sold it to X, Y, and Z. It may not have been a public auction. They may have telegraphed where that went. So I'm sure that that's actually somewhat public information, but I have not looked for it. One is huge for me. I'm not even close to a whole coin. You'll get there, Lisa. You'll get there. I mean, you don't have to. It's just a matter of personal, I guess in my mind, it's foresight. It's looking at a digital revolution I think is coming. Well, I think we're in the midst of a digital revolution of money altogether. You heard President Trump basically saying, or can you call him President Trump when he's not the president right now? Do you have to always call him president, or just have to say former President Trump? Trump was saying that under his administration, no way would we get a central bank digital currency. In my mind, this is inevitability. I think it's going to continually flow down that path, and it's just faster, more efficient, more transparent. What his argument is, and why he's making the statement is, he wants to get all those voters who are pro-privacy. Because if we do get a central bank digital currency, we will not have privacy like we do now. And even now, it's a bit questionable, our level of privacy that we have here in the United States. So central bank digital currency, I think, is going to happen at some point on some level. I do think that the financial world is going to be turned upside down by digital assets, blockchain, and that's why I'm holding my crypto, because I think that change is coming. Lori says, is now a good time to buy some more Bitcoin, or do you think it may drop more? It's a great question. You know, I mentioned on previous shows a few times that I do think that 38,000 level, there was a 38,000 level, which I'm going to bring up here in just a second. There it is. Well, actually, we looked at this on the futures. So let's go to Bitcoin futures. I've got this 38,190 mark mapped out. And that was really just because there was a big breakout here. Well, right, big pop to the upside. You had 3 gigantic green candles out of that. Broke out of some highs here. So I'm looking at that as the most logical point for me to want to buy some Bitcoin, right around 38,190. Could it go lower? Absolutely. I kind of, you think it will just because of the negativity that's being pushed by our current administration. However, I've been following the Coinbase versus the SEC litigation. Now, you guys know that Ripple, there was a quasi-victory for Ripple against the SEC. From what I'm hearing from very unbiased lawyers, is that Coinbase is going to win this case. The Coinbase is going to get dismissed, and all of a sudden Coinbase now has a stronger position, and hopefully the regulators will come in. Cynthia Loomis has already sent letters to the judge in this court case and saying, we have this handled, don't do anything. The government's going to take care of this. So the judge is in a tight spot right now. Like, well, I need to come up with a decision about this court case, but I have the regulators, right? The other body of our 3 branches of government telling me, don't do anything. We'll get on it. Now, I would trust the judge more to get something done right away. I don't trust our politician to get anything done quickly. I mean, to me, that's an oxymoron. Politicians and quickly just don't go together. They've been working on it a long time, and as we know, one party will hate the other party and not support them because they just don't want to support them because of the opposite party. So, silly to me. No problem, John. Have a great day. My birthday coming up. Maybe I'll get some money that I can put into Bitcoin. Well, happy preemptive birthday out there. I hope you have I hope you have something fun planned. I wish JP Morgan would keep their Coinbase BS trash talk to themselves. I'm happy that they talk like that. Because every time Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan talks the way he does, he's making himself seem dumber and dumber. He made comments about, they could just create more Bitcoin. And, that's a problem. Or it's used by fraud, terrorists, and drug dealers. Like, the reason he's doing that, you guys, I mentioned this before, is it's a strategic ploy on the part of banks and the financial system. Because if crypto becomes mainstream, we won't use banks. If you look at the white paper for Bitcoin, it specifically says, become your own bank. That's why this was created. Be your own, in control of all your own assets and your money, as opposed to keeping it at JP Morgan Chase, getting paid 0.01% interest, which is nothing, and they make money off of your money. That's business. So they have to convince you that this is a bad thing. Do not get involved with crypto. It's scary. You will lose everything. It's drug dealers and terrorists, and they're killing babies with Bitcoin. It's like, come on. It's insane, but it's threatening their business, and they have to find a way to create a negative impression in society so that people stay with their firms. But that's it. Will having not make Bitcoin rally anyway? Yes. I did a show last week, I think. I did a show last Thursday. I'm losing track of shows. But I did a show recently on the Bitcoin halving process there. Robert, if you can check that one out. I did talk about that quite a bit in my previous show, or one of the shows I did recently. All right, so that was number 1, Bitcoin. Other than that, not too much to talk about from a technical perspective. I didn't see anything out there that was jumping off the charts at me. As I mentioned, I did short the QQQ, and what I did is I bought directionally. I bought the 395 puts, just for the crowd that's playing along here today. That's down here. I bought 395 puts. It cost me $3. I want to say $3.70 or $3.60. And I bought it right as we broke down below this today. I had that line on there, and as soon as we got below 425.33, I went for it. And unfortunately, it rallied back up. But now we're down in the after-hour session. But who cares? We'll wait and see. I bought the April 16th or 19th or 20th or something like that. It's the April expiration. So I bought myself a lot of time here, And this is a very risky trade at this point because we did not get follow-through today. I was basing it off this shooting star. I thought we'd close this gap, and you notice we got some other gaps here on the Qs that I think might fill. The real challenge is going to happen next week. As you guys may know, we have monster names reporting next week. You've got Facebook, Meta. You have Amazon. You have Apple. You have Google, and you have Microsoft. Like, next week is the mother lode of big names, particularly in that Magnificent Seven. it's the Magnificent Five, if you will. Get those guys in there. Nvidia is not on that list, but to me, that is a monumental week. So Tuesday and I think Tuesday and Thursday, I believe, are the big days, but we'll talk about that on next week's show as we get towards earnings. It makes JP Morgan look like a complete, yep. True, I guess you could say it makes him look like a genius, but yeah. Lisa says, market manipulation, and I watched Dumb Money on Netflix. What the financial institutions did to Robinhood is criminal. Great movie, by the way. If you guys want some fun talk. What they did not do in that movie, which I think would have driven home the point and made it an even better movie, is they talked about short selling and why everybody was short on GameStop. That hedge funds were short GameStop. And they made the hedge funds look like, villains and bad people, which sometimes they might be. But what they should have done is explained how you can go short, right? How do you make money when it goes down? Okay, you borrow shares that are available, etc. But these guys are doing naked shorting. They were just shorting whatever they wanted as much as they wanted. And at one point, there were more shares short than there were shares in existence. That should be mathematically impossible. You cannot do that. That should be illegal. Right? That is forcing something down through a hand of market manipulation that should be illegal, and the government should be on that, and they should have fined the hedge funds that were doing that for going beyond. Where did you get those shares from? Which shares are you shorting? Oh, well, we created them out of thin air. You get a fine, sir, and one of your guys is going to jail. They did not talk about that at all. They said it was heavily shorted, but what does that mean? Right? Is 5% short heavily? Is 30, 50, 80, 100? It was 141% short on GameStop. That's why it had such a crazy one. Does Robinhood allow shorting? I believe they do. I don't use Robinhood account. You'll never catch me on Robinhood. I mean, when you understand how they made their money, which I knew this long before this came to be, they sell order flow, right? So remember, if something is free, you're the product. I guess that sounds weird when I'm doing this show, and this show is free to you. I guess you are the product, but I'm not making any money on it anyway, so there we go. But with Robinhood, they would sell your order flow. That's a conflict of interest, right? And you feel bad for some of these people that just don't understand how the markets work. It's like, oh, it's free. I don't pay commissions. Your order is probably more expensive by being free than if you actually just paid a commission. Because if I just paid a commission and got to direct my order flow and go to the exchange, I cut out all of these money-hungry vultures that are trying to use and manipulate my order flow to make themselves more money. It's crazy. It's nuts. All right, let me go into economic calendar and earnings for you guys for mañana. Friday is a light day from the economic calendar perspective. Let me get my earnings up there real quick. Hold on. I think I got all your questions answered. If you got any more, send them on in. I will do my best to get your questions answered here, but I wanted to run through this real quick and go through what's happening tomorrow. Here we go. Start with the earnings. It's going to be a light day. You have American Express and Colgate-Palmolive. You also have, that's pretty much it. And then earnings calendar, or economic calendar, you can see here for the U.S., you have the core PCE price index. That is a big piece of information. That's inflation, right? This is the one that the FOMC, the Fed, has said, this is what we're looking at. Well, here's your chart of it. The good news for anybody who wants a rate cut is that we've been going lower and lower and lower and lower on this. Great, that's a good sign. However, the expectation, guys, is we're going to jump to 0.2. So it's going to move back up a little bit. I think that's okay. Getting to 0.2 is not that bad. That puts you about 2.4% annualized inflation. So that's okay. If we get a number down here at like 0.1, then I think the probability of the rate increase happening sooner would raise. I think you'll be more likely to see a rate cut sooner if this core PCE price number continues to drop. Other than that, for the U.S., you can see we got personal income, personal spending, and pending home sales, which will round out your Friday session. All right, what it says. The thing I don't like is that they shut off the bid button, so retail couldn't buy anymore. Right, and that's also something that came up in the movie that that they did it as a safety measure, which I'm playing devil's advocate here. But on one hand, you have to look at it from a risk management perspective. You can make the argument that you want to protect your customers by not letting them buy this thing because it just went parabolic because of a gamma squeeze. You had the short squeeze. It was just a once in a lifetime opportunity. People buying that most likely were going to lose everything if they bought it when the Robinhood cut off the buy button. The other side of it is, hey, this thing should have gone to 1,000, but the hedge funds that were getting screwed by the short squeeze forced Robinhood to not allow people to buy it anymore, right? So it's tough. I don't know which side of the equation I find myself wanting to side with. I like the fact that you could argue that it's protecting investors. And most investors, as you watch that movie, most of the investors were like that. They didn't know what they were doing. They're just following what this guy does. Roaring Kitty, whatever he does, I'm going to do. They had no idea how insane the price chart of GameStop looked. I mean, if you're ever in anything that looks like this is going to be one of the most historical charts you'll ever see. Let me go back here. All right, there's your GameStop craziness. And again, I am of the opinion that GameStop will be going to zero. But it rallied all the way. And mind you, it's done a 4-to-1 split. I believe this is, it was like at $480 at one point. So this is on a 4-to-1 split. Huge surge up. Let me just verify that. 1 second. Let me look and see, make sure I got the split number right. I hate being wrong on facts like that because you'll call me out on it. I know you will. Here's the split. Yeah, it was a 4-to-1 split. So this was, at one point, at this high price, GameStop, which hit 120, was basically, call it $481 per share. Anybody who bought that when Robinhood cut off the flow, I'd like to see the exact date when Robinhood said cut it off. But ultimately what happened is they prevented their customers from falling for this Ponzi scheme, if you will. Not Ponzi scheme, but just pump and dump, because it fell from $480 in January 28th of 2021. You move forward to February, 1 month, the thing had fallen all the way down to $40. So from $480 to $40. And I think that Robinhood actually saved investors a lot of money. The thing that is pissing everybody off is, it's my money. Don't you tell me what to do with it. If I want to buy, I should be able to buy. And I agree with that. But in a situation like this chart, I mean, honestly, I think they did the right thing. I know it sounds horrible. I know. So Lisa says, Kitty made like $32 million, I think. We don't know. In the movie, he says that. In the movie, he said, at the end of it says at the time of this, he was up $32 million. I don't know if he sold out of those positions or what he did. I mean, if that pressure caused him to, sell, and he ended up selling down here, because he sold after these big, he actually doubled down after these big drops, according to the movie. Yeah, it's, I don't know. Who knows how much he's got. But anytime you guys are in something that goes parabolic like this, your best choice is just leave it alone. GameStop, let's put it on a weekly here so I don't have to keep on scrolling. This is what GameStop should be doing. Just straight down. And here it's back to that path, right? This is when the hedge funds were shorting it. If you look at what Melvin Capital was doing, they were shorting GameStop. And look at the chart. Melvin was probably pushing this chart down by selling shares they didn't own. And they got caught. Good news is Melvin went out of business. The sad news is there's thousands of hedge funds just like him. This chart, very similar to what we just looked at. It will probably continue to drop. That trend's going to continue to go lower and lower and lower. And we'll probably see GameStop at some point just disappear. All right. Why does Bitcoin network data is very bullish mean? This is Bitcoin network data is very bullish. Oh, I don't know. Pompigliano is a huge maxi. He is a guy who's all about Bitcoin and everything is about Bitcoin and it's the greatest thing ever. I'm not that fanatical. There are some, I think he's looking at it from usage, meaning more people are utilizing the network, and that is bullish. So the more people that use it, the more demand there is on the network, the more transactions are being done. I think that's what he's referencing, most likely. Any comment on Tesla? Maya? Yeah. Let's go look at. We talked about this yesterday, and I thought this was going to be a drag on the NASDAQ and pull it down. It actually didn't pull down the NASDAQ as much as I thought would happen. This is the weekly time frame. Let's go back to a daily. I thought there'd be a bigger drag down because of what Tesla did. I personally don't see this getting strong anytime soon. I personally think you're going to challenge these lows. I think that 166 could come into play. You have this low that goes all the way back to 152. That's April of 2023. Look, unless that Cybertruck comes out and absolutely blows the doors off with sales, no pun intended, there's really declining business profits, I think, for Tesla. They're lowering the price of the cars. Again, you have a lot of different competition, which isn't exactly killing Tesla, but you have more competition coming in, more choice. They have to lower their prices to be more competitive. The more they lower the price, the more it cuts into revenue, the more likely earnings are going to slide. So personally, it just feels like Tesla's going to slide here for a little bit. So, yeah, short them if you got them. Wall Street Bets needs now is to turn save into a meme stock. Yeah, well, you can go out here. There is a... Great, you guys can make me do it. Damn, I hate you guys. You make me do an hour show again. It's all your fault. Let's go FinViz. So I don't have a paid version at FinViz, but they got a great screener, and you can actually go out here. I'll go right charts. I like it better. All right, so if you go here and go to their screener, one of the tabs says float short. All right, so you could go in here to the custom elite package, and you could find things that have over, 60, 70%. Over 30% is honestly a pretty heavy short volume. So here are a bunch of them. That AI company, AI, which is C3, huge amount of short interest. Now, I can't see the numbers here unless I give a paid version. If any of you has a paid version, let me know if there's any that are over like 80% short, because those could very easily become short squeeze potentials. However, when you look at short squeezes now, I personally think that because of what happened with GameStop and AMC, I think hedge funds are being extremely careful with regards to shorting, because there's a whole group of subset of traders, retail traders, Wall Street Bets guys, and what they're looking for is heavily shorted stocks to squeeze to the upside. Will it be the same thing as a GameStop? No way. That was the perfect storm. It's just everyone's sitting at home, not doing anything. It's COVID. Just buy GameStop. But there are short squeezes that will happen. You might get 30, 40, 50%. Yeah, Beyond Meat. Beyond Meat is really, talk about a fall from grace. Let's go look at BYND. And then I got to wrap up. I already did my earnings and everything. So BYND. Yeah, look at that bad boy. Remember back here and they did their IPO, like they were the talk of the town. $240. I was on my show, TraderMerlin, going, short it, short it, short it. Yeah, that chart is ugly. Now, are they going to go bankrupt? I don't know. One of my main arguments early on was, as soon as this company goes public and everyone's all excited about an alternative product like doesn't have meat in it, there's going to be 1,000 competitors, and we're seeing tons of them. You have companies that are just making their own product now. So, yeah, anyway, Beyond Meat, done. There's a reason that this one's shorted so much. All right, that's going to do it for me, everybody. You guys are not going to get me to an hour show. That's it. If you got comments, questions, feedback, put it down under the comments on YouTube. Anywhere on YouTube is great. Any video, I will see those comments, incorporate them in. I have 4 questions that I have to get answered that were under the YouTube videos from the last couple of days. So tomorrow's show, I will be talking about just answering some listener questions. If you got something you want to know, no movement on the book. I'm so wrapped up in my video production project. I'm embarrassed. Pepe. Embarrassed. Tom says Tesla PE ratio has descended from over 1,300 down to 59. Normal car companies is less than 20, and all car companies have tech stuff and other lines of business. Yep. But it still is the darling that has the lion's share of marketplace. It is the juggernaut that runs the EV space for now. And I do think that's going to get chipped away, and maybe that is going to drop a little bit more over time. Yeah, I changed resolution as well with the camera, so hopefully making it better. I don't know. We'll get Bill Addis in the program here. I'll bring him on. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Have a great day. If you have questions, email me or put them down below the YouTube videos. I will see you tomorrow. Take care.